It has been a great season with you all. We've really enjoyed giving you fantasy football content, and that season is now coming pretty close to a close, as we have just one more week after this one where we're going to actually be setting lineups before the playoffs. Unfortunately, not a lot changes at this point. You're not buying players. You're not really selling players. That's kind of past. A lot of people have had trade deadlines already. And you're just going to have to abide by these rules for your playoffs that give you the best chance of winning your leagues. We're going to give you our playoff strategy, and this is going to be our final Fantasy Domain video for this 2023 fantasy football season, which, by the way, has been fantastic. We thank you all for your support, and we do encourage you, if you haven't subscribed, please do. Please like this video. Win your league with this playoff strategy, the title of this video, and we'll give you some keys right now. First one from me. Start the key guys who got you here, okay? At this point, don't be overthinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't be starting ETN because ETN has gotten just barely over double digits in one of his last two games and then under double digits in his last game. Like, don't bench one of your best players because of A, they've been slower recently, or B, because of a matchup. Start your studs. Start the guys who got you here. Don't second guess those type of things, because if you do, you're going to find yourself in positions where you may make wrong decisions and you will be so pissed you did not keep it simple, stupid. You will be so mad. So again, I think that you should just start the key guys that you have on your team, start the ones that have gotten you the playoffs, and give it your best shot. They're going to give you the best chance of winning anyways, and you have a large sample size that would support that anyways. Start the guys who got you here.
Yeah, and with that, we're also going to tell you to drop your low upside, high floor players at this point. While those guys may have offered value for you in the first half of the season, maybe during those really horrible bye weeks, like what was it, week 8, where there were like 6 teams that were on bye, and all of them were like really, really important fantasy pieces. So half the people in fantasy were just completely screwed that week. It was like, okay, whatever, you just kind of blow it off. But at this point in the season, which is the end of the season going into the playoffs, you're not winning your playoff games, your playoff matchups. You're not making a run. You're not winning your championship with any of those players.
No, you definitely aren't. And stash players that you can start if something about their situation changes, okay? So talking about backup running backs, they're going to get a large share of the job due to an injury to the starter. We're talking about guys like Tyler Algier, Kareem Hunt, Ezekiel Elliott, Tyjae Spears, Kenneth Gainwell. We've seen this recently with Zach Charbonnet. Those guys, if the lead back in their offense goes down, you're talking about a warm body getting 80% of the carries and all those guys. That's a league winner.
Yep, and we just saw this with Tyjae Spears, guys, against the Colts. He gets all of the carries, obviously. Once Derrick Henry goes down there, I think towards the end of the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter, and he looked pretty good. He looked very, very good, and he really showed out. And even if Derrick Henry does come back in Week 14, plays for the rest of the year, I'm looking at Tyjae Spears as a real nice stash who could eventually show out, and they give him more opportunities because he's capitalized on those opportunities at every turn this season, and he's looked in a lot of ways better than Derrick Henry.
The next type of player that you maybe should be stashing right now, rookie wide receivers. And the reason is you typically see these rookie wide receivers. Sometimes they come on at the end of the year. Quentin Johnson just had the best game of his career.
Yeah.
And it actually got 7 targets, brought in 5 of them, had 10 fantasy points this week.
Good for him.
Good for him. They often get better over the course of their rookie season. This is no surprise. JSN just had 11 targets in the last Seahawks game.
Yeah.
Right? So those rookie wide receivers that didn't come out and pull up Puka Nacua and get like 20 targets in his first 3 games each, like, those are the ones that maybe you would want to stash because, again, you're starting to see some guys like this produce, and you saw it last week with Quentin Johnston. And then defenses. And this is one of the times of the year where it might be a good idea to carry multiple defenses on your roster. Defense, obviously, is something that personally I stream. You also stream for the most part, I think.
Yeah,
just kind of week to week, identify matchups, dig in our own data, stream defenses. But it's not a bad idea to grab multiple defenses if you're going to be streaming, because again, you're not going to have that advantage. Everybody's going to be looking for the best defense. If people start streaming, people want to put themselves at the highest advantage. They're going to be trying to snipe these from you. It's not always going to be that easy. So you really need to take advantage of that and look ahead, which brings us to our next point here. Looking ahead is actually not a bad idea for the playoffs.
Yeah, not at all. And you're going to want to grab some potential streaming options at the quarterback position specifically there. You'd be surprised at how many good quarterbacks you're going to see on your waiver wire right now, especially if you're in a league that's, semi-smart. Like you can have, I mean, I've seen a bunch of casual leagues where people are bragging about having 3 quarterback ones on their roster and they have 2 of them on their bench. Like what value is that bringing to your team at all? Well, now it could offer a little bit of value because this is, again, once you get to the playoffs, it is very week to week. Kyler Murray may have a ton of rushing upside and a lot of good long-term ceiling in fantasy, but if he has a bad matchup in the playoffs, I'm not starting him. I'm going to start a guy with a better matchup. Some of the guys with some of the lowest roster percentages are guys like Matt Stafford, only 45%, and he's going to go home against the Commanders in the playoffs in Week 15. Jordan Love, home against the Bucks, one of the worst secondaries in the league from a fantasy perspective, only 50% roster percentage. Even Gardner Minshew, I know it's disgusting, but he offers so much passing volume. It's ridiculous. And now with Jonathan Taylor out, they're going to have to throw the ball even more for the foreseeable future. And their schedule from a passing game perspective is cake. Absolute cake. Like it is
like cakey cake.
It's unfair, and it kind of sucks that this is a house money year for the Colts, because if you're any other year with an actual quarterback, they would probably make a run, but hopefully we'd hope.
But next year will be that year.
Yeah, for sure. But Gardner Minshew only rostered in 18% of leagues. If you can get a matchup against the Falcons secondary, if you can get a matchup even in Week 14 against the Bengals, like those are some things that I'm looking for that I'm excited about. Russell Wilson, 51% roster percentage, home against the Chargers. If you're playing the Chargers, if you have a quarterback on waivers that's playing the Chargers in the playoffs, you should be starting that quarterback.
Yep.
Unless it's Bailey Zappi. Russell Wilson's a lot better than that, though.
True.
And then defense, too, like you were just talking about defenses, the Saints, they've got a good matchup in Week 15 against the Giants. Week 15 as well, Falcons playing the Panthers. You can never go wrong with a defense playing the Panthers.
Ever.
In Week 16, look for the Broncos and Jets. They've got the Patriots and Commanders, respectively. And then the Jags and Rams in Week 17, championship weekend, you got them playing the Panthers and the Giants. So who are we targeting there? Quite clearly, the Panthers and the Giants.
Yep.
Pretty self-explanatory there.
It's pretty easy when you get to the end of the year. And the last thing, this is going to be a little bit more 3D chess here, 4D chess. Sorry, 3D chess is just normal chess. Look at your opponent's rosters and use your open bench spots to waiver players they could potentially need.
Yeah.
This is just something that doesn't really have a ton of upside potentially. Most of the time, it's probably not going to make a difference, but it's definitely worth it.
It's a competitive advantage.
I do this in dynasty leagues. Like if I know somebody needs a QB and I have 10. A lot of times I have 5 open roster spots. I'll grab everybody. A lot of times, most of the time in dynasty, there's not QBs, but like even wide receivers, I'll go get the top wide receivers. Tight ends, that's one I've sniped. I mean, in the championship, sniped it away from people.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest lessons you could really take away from this entire video is depth no longer matters. It is all about upside once you get to the playoffs. You start the guys that have the highest upside, even if there's a chance that they bust, even if there's a chance Devon Achane busts, even if there's a chance Gabe Davis busts in a friendly matchup, you start those guys. Unless you're absolutely ridiculously loaded in like an 8-team league or something. I don't know, but everyone's situation is different. But that is the biggest point here. 90% of fantasy football is already luck. So boost your chances at winning your championship with upside. You're not putting yourself in an advantage of having any backups remaining that are just safe floor guys on your bench. Get these streaming options for good playoff matchups on your bench. Okay, we're past the point where injuries past the running back position obviously are going to be valuable. Like at wide receiver, there's just that once you get to the playoffs, there's 6 teams. Obviously, most of the time there's 6 to 8 teams in the playoffs, which means you've got 36 respectable wide receivers that you're putting in your lineup every week.
Correct.
I mean that leaves a lot of big names that honestly are irrelevant fantasy wide receivers at this point, and you just have to cut your ties.
Yeah, cut the dead weight. Again, we have super appreciated you guys supporting us in our first year doing fantasy YouTube. We have really appreciated you guys helping us out with subscribing, liking our videos, so thank you so much for that. We are going to spend our offseason over on Dynasty Domain. Dynasty, if you do not play Dynasty football, but you play fantasy football, Dynasty Fantasy Football is fantasy, but more better. and we are total nerds. It goes year round. You get into the next recruiting class. You get into trades. You obviously are keeping your team. So over on Dynasty Domain, we encourage you to join us over there if you want to continue to get fantasy football content. But Dynasty is fantasy that just never stops.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
We're not quitting, man. We're full time. We're year round.
And so we are going over there on that channel. Make sure you subscribe over there if you haven't. And join a Dynasty League this offseason. I'm going to always encourage people to join a Dynasty League. I'm a Dynasty evangelist for sure. But again, thank you guys so much for everything this season. I'm sure we'll be back in touch here soon. We might do like a best of or worst of video here soon and post it on the channel just so you can see how good and bad we are at times. But we really appreciate you guys' support this whole season. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for everything, and we'll see you later.